Aloha, I'm Carolyn Tanaka and welcome to Live at the Legislature. Every week we sit down with members of the House of Representatives to talk about issues, concerns, and what's happening at the state capitol. Today the House of Representatives will be voting on House Bill 1900, more commonly known as the State Budget Bill. It is an onerous, massive document filled with figures that make the eyes glaze over. But it is also a document that runs the state and pays the bills. This morning joining us is Representative Sylvia Luke. She is the chair of the House Finance Committee. Welcome, Representative.
Good morning, Carolyn.
So why don't we jump right into it? Let's start with how much is the proposed budget and why should we care?
So this budget bill today that we're passing, it amounts to $7.4 billion, and as you said, it funds anywhere from schools, hospitals, the roads, Department of Transportation needs, the airport, so it has all various things that covers government service.
So in putting, not everything can be funded. In putting together this year's budget, what was some of the thinking that went behind it?
So usually what we do is we don't look at just balancing this year's budget, we look at the budget for the next 6 years. And there were a couple of disturbing trends when this budget was proposed by the governor to the legislature. Let me just point out two things that that were presented that we had to correct or consider. So one of them was they made a huge miscalculation, which they caught later on, which amounted to about $50 million of what's known as unfunded liability, which wasn't calculated in the budget. The second thing that was presented was the governor's budget included about $67 million worth of Airbnb or short-term rental new taxes. Mm-hmm. However, the governor did not present us with any bill amounting to the $67 million. And because the governor's budget assumed the $50 million that was going into unfunded liability and $67 million of taxes that they claim were realized, which didn't have any bills attached to it. It left a big hole when we looked at the budget. So that was a little bit troubling this year. So even with that, what we had to do was, we had to do some cutting of programs or cutting of services to make sure that we pass the balanced budget, not for this year, but for the next 6 years.
Well, let's talk about the priority this year for the legislature is homelessness and affordable housing. Where in the budget are those things? How did you work with that in the budget?
Because both the House and the Senate and the legislature believe that this year the priority should be given for housing and homeless services, instead of putting those things in the budget, there are various bills that are passing. So including Housing First, rental subsidies, Ohana Zone, because there are multitude of bills that are being covered by bills, we have decided to give more public input to those bills, to take those items out of the budget and have the bills consider all those important issues. But with that said, let me just make clear that the budget does include $30 million of what's known as Ohana Zone. So that's transitional zones that we could help homeless individuals to get to permanent housing and provide services. In addition to that, there's an additional $35 million appropriated for affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And currently in the budget itself, what's provided in state government, we have about over 88 active contracts for homeless services amounting to $39 million.
So it's not, so the legislature has been funding the homeless programs for several years now in the base budget. And so this year you've got an additional amount of funding that's going to those programs?
So in addition to what's being considered with the 88 active contracts, we will be looking at different initiatives. Clearly, one of the things that have been missing is mental health services, because many of the homeless individuals we see do have mental health issues and other health needs. So one of the priority is to look at mental health services as well.
The budget is not only, obviously you have a whole pile of things that need funding in state government, and you are not able to address all of that. You also can use the budget to set policies. Can you give us some examples of how you've done that?
Yeah. So thanks for that question. So over the years, one of the things we have done is really look at vacancies. So one of the things we wanted to do was not allow departments to use monies appropriated for positions for other expenses. So sometimes they would pay overtime or equipment, and that's not a good policy. So when I became chair of finance about 6 years ago, we have taken a hard approach on vacancies and cutting down the number of vacant positions, because those ultimately become slush fund for the departments for them to use it for other expenses, and that's not a good approach. So over the years, we have really reduced the number of vacancies, and even in this budget, we have eliminated 200 positions amounting to $10 million. And what we want to do is we want to encourage departments to fill those positions, because some of those positions are important positions, like healthcare providers, for instance, invasive species personnel. And so these are important policy decisions that the legislature has made, and we want to continue to work with the department so that they can fill these positions as opposed to leaving them vacant.
So that to make government a lot more efficient and effective, you can do things in the budget to accomplish that. What I really found interesting is what you did with the Hawaii Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility.
Right. So we have Hawaii Youth Correctional Facilities. About 20 years ago, the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facilities on the windward side house about about over 100 youth. And so for 100 youth, there were about over 120 guards. Today, because of the attention of moving to, as opposed to incarceration, we wanted to go into rehabilitation and treatment. We have reduced that population from over 120 to 20 kids. So we have 17 boys and 3 girls at the facility. In spite of that, we continue to have over 100 personnel at HYCF, including over 70 youth correctional officers. That's not a good approach, because what we need to do is we need to change the mindset. We cannot continue to treat kids like criminals. We want to give them a second opportunity. So we've been converting those positions to social workers. And so that's one of the things we will do.
Thank you so much. A lot to talk about in the budget, not enough time. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capitol.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators. From your district number to the committees and current bills your legislators have introduced, this is an easy way to stay up to date with what is happening in your community. If you're looking for detailed information concerning Hawaii State Senate and House hearings, please visit olelo.org/gov-archives. Videos are arranged by date, with the most recent at the top of the list.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the Public Access Room located in Room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. Open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in session. The Public Access Room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process. The public is welcome to track and affect legislation pending before the Hawaii State Legislature.
Aloha and welcome to Live at the Legislature. I'm Jill Kuramoto. Every week we sit down with Hawaii senators to talk about the events and the issues that are happening within the Senate during this legislative session. And joining us today we have Senator Glenn Wakai. And Senator Wakai represents District 15, Kalihi to Pearl Harbor. Senator Wakai is the chair of the Senate Committee on Economic Development, Technology and Tourism. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm super thrilled to be on Live at the Legislature. For some of the viewers, it's been 25 years when Jill and I were actually anchoring the news together in Guam a long time ago. So it's the first time I've gotten the opportunity to be interviewed by my illustrious former colleague.
Always great to work with you. Well, let's talk about your committee. And I know it's a broad number of issues that you have to deal with. One of the major ones is how to have the state effectively develop projects with a limited number of resources and grow the economy. One of the innovative ideas that you've introduced is an idea of entering the state into public-private partnerships, or P3s. Explain that.
PPP, my three favorite letters in the legislative process, because it's a different approach to providing government services to the public. The old model was pull money out of a taxpayer's pocket, 100% state paid for facility. Rail is a good example of how that thing's gone sideways because it's 100% taxpayer paid for. Public-private partnership invites the private sector, their investment and their technical expertise to help us as a state move a project along. If you looked at the rail system, if there was PPP, they would have an advertising campaign, they would put electricity and fiber optics in the conduit, they would have naming rights, they would have all kinds of different approaches to how we promote and build out this particular facility. And one of my biggest projects in the district I represent is Aloha Stadium, and using PPP as kind of the roadmap for reinventing that entire area. There you have a 43-year-old facility that is kind of rusted, always needs millions of dollars in repair every year. We need to tear that facility down, build something that is more multi-use, perhaps a 35,000 seat stadium that can accommodate rugby, can accommodate soccer, can accommodate concerts, can accommodate UFC fighting, can accommodate more than just football. But it's not going to just be the stadium itself. There's 100 acres that the stadium sits on currently. It's home to a swap meet and 6 UH football games. It could be so much more. It could be something similar to what Los Angeles has at LA Live. You have the Staples Center, and around it you have an ice rink, you have theaters, you have museums, you have restaurants, you have hotels, you have vibrancy. We have no vibrancy around Aloha Stadium. And as we move forward, hopefully with that idea, we will bring in public-private partnership to develop that entire area that can connect really Arizona Memorial to the stadium. You have 1.8 million people, our number one tourist attraction. They get on a bus, they see the memorial, they get on the bus, and they bail. There's nothing for them to see and stick around to look at. So public-private partnership, I think, would be huge in redeveloping that Aloha Stadium area.
Well, construction right now is booming, so, and there may be only a limited number of entities that could enter into some of these state projects. How would you ensure that the state is entering into cost-effective partnering?
PPP is not for everything. Maybe it's for about 30% of government projects. An example where PPP sometimes doesn't work is when you build prisons. Prisons are very expensive, but you know, if you think about the business model, the business entity wants to have people stay in there as long as possible and as many people as possible so that they get compensated for that lease agreement. So maybe prisons are not a good example of where the state would want to go into a PPP. But to answer your question, there are a lot of entities, and actually with PPP, you invite all kinds of outside developers and outside ideas into a state. And you know, unfortunately, we have a state here that when it comes to government contracting, we're pretty bad at government contracting, and we have the same players doing change orders and extending the project. It's never on time, it's never on budget. I think the public deserves more, and I think PPP is the path forward.
All right. Well, another very innovative idea that you've proposed to help boost the economy are small satellite launch sites. Explain that.
There are 20 20,000 small satellites in the queue. And you know, I don't have my mobile phone, but we do everything on a mobile phone these days, and as we have more and more devices, we need more and more broadband and more satellite connections, and not just in the urban areas. Across Africa or Southeast Asia, where there's very little coverage, we can get coverage to those parts of the world with small satellite launches. And Hawaii, because we're the closest to the equator, we're spinning faster than any place else in America. So spin launch, which is a newcomer to the space arena, isn't your grandfather's old traditional Cape Canaveral kind of upright, boom, I'm going to shoot into the heavens approach. Theirs is using centrifugal force, and you pretty much just catapult a rocket out of a chute, kind of like a gun going off. So instead of having 90% fuel, which is the traditional way of shooting a rocket into space, using electricity, centrifugal force, and just launching a satellite into orbit. And this is a huge market. One of these upright, SpaceX, is the private sector that's coming into play here. When SpaceX shoots a satellite, a vertical satellite, or excuse me, rocket into space, it's a $20 million investment, albeit there's like 10 satellites in there. When we're doing the centrifugal force spin launch, it'll be $250,000. So you can see how there's a huge cost savings, but when you have 20,000 satellites in the queue, that's a lot of economic opportunity.
But let's talk about the impact on the community and the surrounding area. I know that there's some concerns about that. What kind of impact would there be?
Well, 30 years ago, the Big Island, particularly of Puna, was very against small satellite launches because that was the traditional Cape Canaveral, ugly fuel launch and very impactful. As I mentioned, the centrifugal force is kind of like a bullet, just there's a bang, and that's pretty much it. That's the environmental impact on the community. And they don't need a huge footprint. They're looking for about 10 acres. And right now they're looking kind of in that Ka'u area, or if the folks in Ka'u don't want the satellite there, they might be looking at the northern Big Island, Kohala, north of Kohala, or they might be even looking at Molokai. So there's a lot of different areas that they're looking at, but it's such a huge opportunity that I hope Hawaii can capture.
And you will be going out to the community in order to be a little more collaborative about this idea?
Oh yes, on March 24th, Saturday, myself, Kai Kahele from the Senate are going to go and visit with the people from the Ka'u Ahumoku and talk story with them. If this is something that they find repulsive, we'll take our bat and ball and we'll go someplace else. But we will certainly embrace the community and get their input on what they want to see in their community.
Terrific. Well, I know both of those measures are in the House for consideration.
Go House.
So stay tuned.
Great ideas, House guys.
Stay tuned. But thank you for joining us for Live at the Legislature. Thank you for watching us. And we'll see you next week.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature Weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the Public Access Room located in Room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. Open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in session. The Public Access Room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process. The public is welcome to track and affect legislation pending before the Hawaii State Legislature.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capitol.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators. From your district number to the committees and current bills your legislators have introduced, this is an easy way to stay up to date with what is happening in your community. If you're looking for detailed information concerning Hawaii State Senate and House hearings, please visit olelo.org/gov-archives. Videos are arranged by date, with the most recent at the top of the list.
Hi, good morning. My name is Representative Andrea Tupola. I am the State House Representative for District 43, which starts in Maili and ends in Eva. This morning, our conversation is going to be centered around government transparency and whether or not the approaches of our government have been appropriate in some hot topics. And we have special guests with us here today. So we have Auntie Twinkle Borch, who has been the leader of the Pu'uhonua o Wai'anae for over 11 years. And we have Ms. Tiffany Kakalia, who is a former Kahuku Mauna board member, which is the advisory board for Mauna Kea management. And I know that we actually just had a little topic about that in the previous clip about Puna and Hilo. So let's start there, because actually there was a meeting in Nanukuli about this, right? Was it SB 3090?
Yes.
And so specifically, what does the bill cover?
The bill covers the idea of having an independent management authority for Mauna Kea. That's basically what it is.
And so that Senate bill is crossing over into the House, and actually, more likely than not, I'll be able to vote on it. But in this meeting that was held in Nanukuli in my district, and it was regarding this bill, was there a lot of support for it or against, or do you think people are still kind of confused about what this is exactly doing?
You know, I think coming from Hawaii Island and visiting Nanakuli and this subject being presented on, it was about less than 30 people in the meeting, and most of the people didn't seem to have maybe long time information or know what the long time conversation was. So information was presented that may not have truly, I think, grasped the whole idea of what the bill is trying to address.
So the bill is actually trying to make a new Mauna Kea management authority. And are all of the 8 or 9 board members on this authority going to be governors appointed?
That's what it says, governor appointed. There has been problems with the current managing system in place, but you know, there's things that are more rooted problems that need to be addressed. The idea of a independent management authority is a good one, but not at this time.
Right, because are there 2 pending court cases that people should know about in regards to the root of the problem?
Right, and right now in the Supreme Court is the case addressing the sublease agreements, and also an appeal to the Supreme Court on the contested case of the conservation district use application. So there's things in progress that really, if something like an independent management authority right now would kind of get the ball rolling, it would upset a lot of progress that we've been making. And I just, you know, in conversation with people that have been looking at management options or issues, really an audit, a legislative audit on the finances and mismanagement should take place. There's no way a sound proposal or plan can be set in place or even brought to the table in just a few weeks or months when 50 years of assessment needs to take place before doing something like that.
Right, and if you're unclear on what the issue is, definitely you can look up in the auditor's report. As far back as 1998, the auditor has been reporting a lot of the illegalities that are up there. You know, are the leases current? Should UH be collecting tourists, fees when they go up there? They actually do it, and they haven't gotten that approval through the Board of Regents. Should they be renewing those subleases that haven't been looked at? And all of these things are at the root cause of it, and that's what is being suggested by our guest, Tiffany, that we actually look into the root causes of the issue. My last question for you is this bill community-minded?
You know, I wouldn't say that it totally is. It is a concern to look at options of management, but not right now. Like I said, there's other pressing issues, and one is there's a lot in support of killing this bill because it doesn't truly reflect the consensus of the community at the foremost conversations on the topic, and supporting a financial and forensics audit of what's been happening over the past few years, and really for lawmakers, including policymakers, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs trustees, to really stop and take some time to realize that there's cases in place right now. and waiting on rulings would be helpful. If at the very least anyone would want to do something in support as far as lawmakers go, the suggestion of a moratorium and really stopping further this development, desecration, and manipulation of Native rights is something that we should pay more attention to, because it's not a little thing. It's the root of the problem. So that's pretty much what we're in support of.
Right, and so Auntie Twinkles, in regards to community and, has the government been transparent? You guys have been a hot topic this past week. There's been a lot of controversy. You guys had the open house. How did the open house go?
Our open house went very well. I never expected that much people. We did have about 550 on paper. I believe we had a little over 700 there.
Wow. Yeah. So, and the point of doing the open house was to
just invite people in to see what it's like on our side, and just to have one open mind. We're not living the way people think we are, or when they talk about homeless, they reflect about us on like Kaka'ako, 2 different areas.
2 different areas, not the same issue. Yeah. So the newspapers have been reflecting that the government's working with the community. Is that true in your eyes?
They've been with us like maybe the last 2 years, then they stopped. All of a sudden they came up again. I've been waiting for this to happen, but they're not being honest.
Are you confident that there is actually parcels and a transition plan for that quantity of people, and taking into consideration families, jobs, transportation, water, sewage? Do you feel like that plan is in place and ready to go by June?
No.
Does that make you
like
concerned?
A miracle. For me, that would be like a miracle. They have been sending in agencies for do this, for that, and whatnot, but no ways we're gonna make it till June. We need a longer time.
Right. And I definitely think that if this was the state's idea and if they wanted to push for it, the current administration had 4 years to work with you.
Yes.
Not against you or for you or at you, but work with you.
Or even with the meetings that we did have with them, it was either their way or no way, We people, we human.
Right. Well, and I want to thank both of you for being here. Last week we had a town hall in my district about goat eradication and watershed protection, and the same issue came up. Is the government being transparent with us? Are they giving us notice? Are they actually taking into consideration community concerns? Because why? Because they live in the community, and that at the end of the day, our community members have to live with these decisions, and our community members have to be able to support these decisions. So we're going to encourage you to stay tuned in, and if you have any questions, you of course can get a hold of our guests, but we wanted to bring people who are on the heat of these issues that actually have been studying and can give first-hand insight on what's about to happen. So thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrea Tupola, State House Representative, District 43.